Good morning. I realize it's only 9:15, which is, 9:10 Calvary time, but we have a lot to cover today, so if y'all would top off your coffees and come on down, we're going to get started here in a minute with our annual review. Sam will give me the thumbs up maybe when we're broadcasting to the world. We're glad for the folks who are joining us via live stream today. Those in the room. Let me see here. So much technology is going to happen today, from cassette tapes to videos to all kinds of things, just to whet your appetite a little bit. Well, good morning. Just to acknowledge right up front, this has been a hard week in Memphis, right? This has been a hard week for our world, and as we were preparing for this, I was talking to Catherine and Paul and other folks and gaining some strength to say we can acknowledge where we are and also feel all the more called to be present to our city as our city needs us. And I've been digging around in the Book of Common Prayer of all places and found so many prayers that were relevant to our time, which kind of gives me, it's heartening to remind that lots of other people in lots of other places and times have endured hardship together, prayerfully, faithfully. So I'd like to begin with our prayer, with the prayer for the city. Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious God, in your word you have given us a vision of that holy city to which the nations of the world bring their glory. Behold and visit, we pray, the cities of the earth, and Memphis in particular. Renew the ties of mutual regard which form our civic life. Send us honest and able leaders. Enable us to eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression, that peace may prevail with righteousness and justice with order, and that men and women from different cultures with differing talents may find with one another the fulfillment of their humanity. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. We're going to begin... That's going to be our agenda today, but we're going to begin with Anna Catherine Word. She was our outgoing senior warden this past year, guided us ably, and she's going to have a few words for us about the previous year. Come on.
Thanks, Scott. First, I just want to say what an extraordinary privilege it was to serve on the vestry, and especially to serve as the senior warden. It was such an odd time to be on the vestry. I was thinking about it, thinking back about this talk, and over 2/3 of my vestry experience took place over Zoom, which I think is a little bit out of the ordinary, but I want to just say how wonderful Scott and Catherine and Paul and Kim Kitterman and James Aldinger and the folks before me were. The vestry never lost enthusiasm or momentum or excitement about the work here at Calvary. It just sort of shifted. And it was just a really odd but wonderful place to be. So we started our year on Zoom in a particularly worrisome COVID wave. We didn't know what the year was going to look like, but soon it became apparent that we were going to be in some way coming out of this pandemic style of life. So the vestry spent a lot of time thinking about what it would look like to welcome people back into Calvary after years of lockdowns and quarantines. What did people need to know? How would people need to feel differently about being in the space, spacing, masks? We talked a lot about people's safety and how to welcome folks back. Some of the things that came out of that was the new welcome signage downstairs that y'all might have noticed. It went up March of last year, I believe. We're going to be doing more, obviously, post-Capitol campaign. We kind of put a hold on that because we realized that we could set up a lot of things to welcome people back, but then we were going to just redo it again in another year or so. So more to come on that, but a lot of conversations about how to bring people back downtown. The other thing we focused on was updated safety protocols, which seemed appropriate. It wasn't just about the pandemic. It was about natural disasters, threats of violence, medical emergencies. So we had a team that was overseeing that work, and very grateful for them. We learned a lot about architectural drawings and capital campaigns, a lot about the campaign, Rise and Be Radiant. We worked through a lot of hard challenges and celebrated a lot of victories together. We had some hard decisions to make as a parish. We had some hard things happen as a community last year, but I've never been more grateful to be grounded as a vestry member at Calvary than I was last year. But perhaps the thing I'm most grateful for and most excited about was the opportunity to work with Catherine Bush and a committee of amazing people to start our Sacred Ground program here at Calvary. For those of you who don't know, it's a film and readings-based curriculum created by the Episcopal Church to really have difficult conversations about race and faith and where we are today. We started those conversations in March. By September, we had 2 cohorts going here at Calvary. I do think it will be something that will continue. I see several of my colleagues from the class in here. I'm proud to co-facilitate one of the sessions with Elizabeth Crosby, and it has been, there's not a word big enough. Incredible is not a word big enough to talk about the work that has come out of that and the conversations. And I've been particularly grateful for those conversations this week. I'm just really proud of the work we did. And again, I just want to say how remarkable the leadership and staff is here at Calvary. Truly, we are so blessed to have them leading everything for us. And it was just such an honor to work alongside them for just such a small bit of time. Thanks very much, y'all. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Anna Catherine. I'm really glad you named to remind us what a weird time it was to be on vestry 2 years and guiding us through that completely unforeseen time. Great group of people. Anna Catherine, thanks for your leadership. And I want to say thank you to the 5 folks rolling off. Anna Catherine rolled off, Will Haley, Catherine Jasper moved away and now is carrying triplets. I don't know if you got that news from her. John Owen and Laura Trott, these are our 5 folks who served the past 3 years. Deeply grateful for their time. It was so much more than giving away just one Tuesday a month. They gave their creativity, their curiosity. We needed all of it to navigate the past 3 years. So grateful for all of these people. Someone else who has worked hard is our treasurer, Eric Ball. Is this your first full year as treasurer? You kind of onboarded? So here it is. All yours, Eric. You want to run this?
Okay, great. So like Scott said, I'm Eric Ball, treasurer here at Calvary. And this has been my first full year as treasurer, so this is my first opportunity to stand up and present the financials. In my day-to-day life, I am a research analyst in an investment fund, so I'm one of those peculiar people that finds financial reports kind of thrilling. If you are not one of those people and your eyes are about to completely glaze over for the next 5 minutes, I'll hit the highlights. I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about. The financial position of the church is really strong, and pledges are really important. And pledges are distinct from the capital campaign commitments, and we really rely on annual pledges to determine the budget annually and that funds the day-to-day operations of the church. So with that, we'll review. This slide shows our 2022 actual results as compared to what we budgeted for 2022 and as compared to the results in 2021. And you can see the church generated about $2.5 million in revenues. That was about 9 or 10% above what we had budgeted, so a good outcome. And our expenses were only about 6% above what we had budgeted, so we ended up with a surplus this year of about $120,000. There's a good use for that money. We found out there's some unplanned structural work that needs to be done in the courtyard, so that's going to cost about $150,000. So that money will hopefully be mostly funded by that surplus from last year. One thing that's important to note is that we budget every year for a break even. We sort of look at what our actual pledges are, and then we set the budget, set the expenses based on what we expect to bring in revenues. So a surplus is not something that we count on every year, but you'll notice we had a very large surplus in 2021, and a lot of that is due to the PPP program and other kind of pandemic-related grants. And the church and the vestry committed to reinvesting that money into the community. And so you can see below the line here, we've got that Welcome In renovation. Over the last 2 years, the church has spent about $225,000 to help renovate and rebuild the Welcome In. So really great use of some of the excess funds that we received. So over the next few slides, I'm going to talk about kind of where our money comes from, the sources of our income. We're going to go over the 2023 budget, and then we're going to talk about pledge stats for 2023, kind of where we are to date. So where does our money come from? This pie chart doesn't have any numbers on it, but I'll tell you what they are. This is the sources of revenue in 2022. The blue, you can see, is more than 50%. It's 55% of all of our income comes from pledge receipts. So it is the most important source of our annual operating budget. The gray piece of that pie up there is a sort of unplanned or unpledged gifts and offering plate. That's another 20%. So 75% of the church's revenue that funds our day-to-day operations comes from gifts. And the most important of it is pledges, because we can budget based on the pledges, we can count on the pledges. The orange piece of that pie is the endowment. So we have a really well-funded endowment. We're incredibly blessed to have that. And then a certain percentage of the endowment every year gets sent to Calvary Church to help fund operations. That funds about 15%. And then the balance is some event income and the parking lot income. The parking lot is, while we're under construction this year, it's unlikely that we're going to get kind of the normal amount of parking lot income. So we're going to have to take that into consideration when we're doing the 23 budget. All right, so this is the 2023 budget. It's been provisionally approved by the vestry. However, because of the capital campaign, our annual giving season was a little bit unusual this year. And so we're still waiting on some pledges that we normally get. And so we'd like to, if you haven't turned in your pledge cards, we'd like you to do so to help create a little bit more space in the budget. Because as you can see, we're projecting and budgeting for about a 10% decline in income this year. And to offset that, we're hoping to have about a 6% decline in expenses so that we run a balanced budget. I'm sure a lot of you have been paying attention to the news, hearing about inflation. Budget could be a little bit tight this year because of inflation. So if we did get more pledges, one of the highest priority items would be to insert a cost of living wage adjustment for the staff. I would note that personnel and the wonderful staff we have at Calvary are our largest expense item across all the programs here. So we would really love to be able to keep everybody in line with sort of broader market prices. But this is our budget for 2023. Let's look at the pledge stats. So you can see, to date we've got about 1.265 million in pledges. This is what has actually been pledged for 2023. Pledge cards, or if you filled out the online form, this is what we've actually gotten. That is down about 10% from 2022, where we had a little over 1.3 million. So we're optimistic about this, though, because you can see how many people have actually turned in their pledge cards on these stats. We've only gotten 210 pledges this year. Last year we had 236, and on average, people who repledged this year have increased their pledges by about 10%, and 80% of the repledgers have either kept their pledges the same or increased them. So if you haven't filled out your pledge card, if it got lost in the mail, if you were confused because you thought the capital campaign was also your pledge, we still need your pledge. If you haven't filled out your pledge, please do so. It would really help. You might be wondering, okay, $6,000 average pledge, are there just a bunch of outliers kind of messing up the stats? This is the distribution of pledges, and you can see the three bars kind of in the middle that are the largest, pushing furthest to the right. that accounts for about 50% of all pledges. So that's from $1,500 to $10,000 annually. And if you broaden it just a little bit further, from $1,000 to $20,000, that's over 80% of all the pledges. So I like this chart because it really shows we've got a great distribution. Whatever you can give, people are giving here at Calvary. So there's great participation across the church, and we really, really appreciate that. So to close, the church is in great financial position. The budget maybe a little bit tight because we're still waiting on some pledges, but we've got cash in the bank. We have no debt at this church, which is fantastic. So to conclude, please send your pledge cards in.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. A lot of us, we get squeamish about talking about money even if we're not in church, right? The story, I wish I had his name in front of me. He went through the Bible. He was a businessman in the 70s. He went through the Bible and decided he would count up the passages that referred to money. And he got past 2,000 and realized that a large percentage of the parables involve money. Now, they're complicated teachings, right? They're challenging teachings, a lot of them. But I really appreciate Eric and the way that Calvary has attended to these things. It's one way that we describe our life. It's one contact we make with each other. And it's clear that our faith says we have to be faithful with these ways of being in the world. So thank you, Eric. Really well done on your maiden voyage into the Treasurer's Report as well. So we're going to roll on into Heidi Rupke, who has not advanced technology, retro technology. It looks like that she's going to offer to this. Some of you kids don't even know what that is. It's going to have your pictures.
Okay, so there's this one and then the pictures are next. Okay. All right. Okay. Good morning. Hey, I'm Heidi Rupke, and I coordinate the speakers for the Lenten Preaching Series, which begins this year on Wednesday, February 22, and runs through Friday, March 31. You may have heard that this year is the 100th anniversary of the series, and thanks to the wonders of technology, there are more ways than ever for you to tune in from anywhere in the world. Facebook live stream, YouTube, a podcast. But, as Scott alluded, cast your memory back with me for a moment to a time when you might have heard an LPS sermon like this. This is a dual. So, okay.
For the last 2 days, as many of you know, we have been really asking a question. We've really trying as contemporary people to ask this question that you can express in various ways. Let's express it in secular language first. Is a period of time, period of history, period of culture, etc., which began approximately in the late 17th century, is that chapter of our culture's history ending and changing into something else?
All right. I just put Scott Crosby to sleep in the front row here. Maybe some of you recognized who that was. That was Herb O'Driscoll, who was a feature of Lenten Preaching Series during the 1980s and 1990s. So if we imagine the preaching series of that time, and when you might have gotten it on a cassette tape, let's imagine back a bit further to the first years of Lenten preaching, to the 1920s. 1923 is the first recorded year that we have for the Lenten preaching series at Calvary. So if I think through the technical details, I'm getting rid of that podcast, that live stream, probably not even a microphone, but essentially a group of people gathered in a nearby theater. Actually, Jill Piper said, she was researching this for me, and she said it was held at a local theater. And when I say people, the essential part, the people had gathered, I have to think that that is not going to include women or people of color in the pulpit, and probably not too many of those in the audience either. Some of the members of the LPS committee imagined with me what questions may have been swirling around for that 1923 audience. And maybe they were thinking, how do we recover and adapt after the ravages of a worldwide influenza pandemic, which they had just come through? How do we live among people who have different views, backgrounds, and experiences than we do? How are the shifting global powers going to affect how we live as people of faith? How do we live with specters of violence in ourselves and in others? LPS has worked for the last century and continues to work because it allows us to come to church with these types of central questions. Not because it provides all the answers, but because it provides a place to seek answers in the company of others or just sit with things that may be unanswerable. 100 years is not too long to wrestle with these big questions. So this year, we have incredible spiritual guides on our Lenten journey. From John Meacham, canon historian at the National Cathedral, to the Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor, one of the most prolific spiritual writers and explorers of our time, to the Reverend Becca Stevens, founder of Thistle Farms in Nashville. These are people that I want to be listening to. I hope there are also some names on our LPS list for this year that you don't yet recognize. Our theme for the 100th anniversary is the future of faith. And we want to not only build on giant shoulders, but hold space for the up-and-comers who will guide us into the next century. Some of these speakers are younger than I am, and they offer valuable insight and critique about this moment and what it might mean. I hope you'll mark your calendars for the Reverend Jennifer Bailey or Dr. Jamar Tisby or Ms. Caitlin Curtis and see what the future might hold. So you might be asking, what is the best way to come to LPS in 2023? I can tell you absolutely 100% without doubt, in person. The same way you would have come in 1923. Have a waffle at the waffle shop and ask some of your thoughtful or curious friends to join you for a service and chat afterwards. If you need a quieter space, come for Silence in the City on Tuesdays. Equally as important as coming is volunteering. Hundreds of people will be coming through our building every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday during Lent, and goodness knows they will be lost. We need ushers and greeters and waffle shop volunteers to make this giant party happen yet again for the 100th time. Go to calvarymemphis.org/Lent to find volunteer opportunities there. If you have all the answers you need, I'll understand if I don't see you at the Lenten Preaching Series and Waffle Shop. But if you're like me, living a few questions and in need of some company as I explore these questions, well, I'll plan to see you on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from February 22 through March 31. Your seat is saved. But if you don't, if my invitation isn't quite enough for you, I have a little special invitation here from someone you may recognize.
Hello to all of my friends at Calvary Church Memphis, and to all those who make possible the continued mission of preaching through the season of Lent, each day in the Lenten season. That is a tradition that has been going on for 100 years, and we give God thanks for those 100 years and pray God's blessing on the years that are to come. This year, the focus of this Lenten preaching will be on faith. Faith. Now, I know church folk are used to hearing the word faith. Religious folk are used to the word faith. But we're talking about faith. My grandma used to love that hymn that says, "Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by many a foe, that will not totter at the brink of any earthly woe." My grandmother was the daughter of sharecroppers. Her life was far harder than mine. And hers was a life that was made possible to have vitality and integrity and dignity, saturation with eternity, that gave her the ability, a woman who cleaned homes, the ability to keep going, even against the odds. She kept going until every one of her children received a college education, including my mother. She kept going, even when her only daughter, my mother, was sick and eventually died. She kept going in her 70s when she had to turn around and help my daddy raise, my sister and I raise 2 children in her 70s. She kept going. And I am now convinced that she kept going by keeping a faith. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by many a foe, that will not totter at the brink of any earthly woe. Dr. King in 1962, speaking about how human progress happens in a macro sense, but how it happens for us in a micro sense, each of us in our own lives, how we move forward, sometimes against the odds. He said, faith is taking the first step, even when you can't see the entire staircase. Faith. Faith in God. Faith in what is good. Faith in what is loving. Faith that the good will out. Faith for me that in the end, love wins. So keep the faith. Keep the faith for those of us who have a particular faith. And keep the faith for those of us who have no particular faith. But keep the faith and take the first step, even when you can't see the staircase. Congratulations, Calvary Church. Happy preaching birthday. And God bless you.
There's a guy who can't not preach, right? He can't not preach. And I didn't want to follow that, so I'm going to make sure that Scott and Meg, you know, a few weeks ago in the forum here, we heard a lecture about Prathia Hall, who is a lesser-known civil rights leader, and she's the one person Dr. King said, I'm not preaching after her. She's got to go somewhere later. Anyway, you can handle it. Y'all may know that we have a capital campaign underway, and Scott and Meg Crosby have agreed to lead it. They got a few words.
Good morning. Thank you all. That is a really tough act to follow, so I will say. But we are delighted to be here today. I don't think there's a person among us who has not heard about Arise and Be Radiant, our capital campaign that we're very excited about. But for those of you who may not have been at the Botanic Garden or have not had an opportunity to see the video, we're going to show a quick video that gives you a good summary of the campaign, and then Scott and I will give you an update and some logistics on where to pledge. Cue the video. Hello, and peace be with you. We are Meg and Scott Crosby, chairs of Calvary's Arise and Be Radiant Capital Campaign. We are so proud to be a part of Calvary's vibrant community and to worship in the oldest continually open public building in Memphis. Our legacy is making God's love visible in downtown Memphis.
Building on this legacy, we now move to make God's love visible through the physical structures of our church. The vision is to turn our church outward and to welcome all into a more inclusive, accessible, safe space for everyone. Getting to this point has been a collective, tremendous effort by so many people at our church as we move together to make our church and our buildings further our mission.
Calvary's buildings are famously difficult to navigate, our only accessible entry being off of a bumpy alley out back. Nonetheless, for decades now, Calvary's been intent on living like a lighthouse, spreading light through downtown Memphis. But imagine exchanging that alley entrance for a spacious atrium that opens onto a green, vibrant plaza. Once inside, staff offices and a staircase to the second floor are clearly visible to your right. A quiet chapel space is on your left, and a refurbished mural room is straight ahead. Further in, you'll find a beautifully renovated kitchen, and down the hall are new showers, restrooms, spaces designed for our outreach ministries. Calvary can be both livelier and safer when we can simply see each other better. At 2nd and Adams, to the side of our bright red doors is a new ramp that will access a welcoming foyer. Historic Calvary Church will retain its charm, but the floors will be refinished, pews will be spaced out and made more comfortable. The chancel will get a new stone floor, and our treasured organ will be restored to lift the praises of generations to come. If you come to church with children, the nursery and toddler rooms will now be on the same floor as the church, easily accessed through a wide hallway that passes a relocated and improved library and restrooms that are easy to find. The choir suites reconfigured to eliminate tramping up and down the stairs for vestments. Investment areas for acolytes and Eucharistic ministers and our sacristy will all become accessible to everybody when the elevator gets a new back door. Older kids will have spaces for fun and learning on floor 3, and our youth will have a great new perch up on the 4th floor. The title of our Arise and Be Radiant campaign comes from the prophet Isaiah, and it expresses well our desire to make God's love visible by making all the beautiful parts of Calvary more visible to each other and to the world outside our doors.
Arise, shine, for your light has come,
and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you.
Lift up your eyes and look around.
They all gather together, they come to you.
Your son shall come from far away,
and your daughter shall be carried on their nurse's arms.
Then you shall see and be radiant.
your heart shall thrill and rejoice.
Arise with us as we approach the future with hope.
We humbly invite you to give generously today to support Calvary's radiant future.
Thank you.
Holy God, you call us to make your love visible in the world around us. Give us wisdom and courage to meet this moment with generosity and with hope, that we may show forth your loving kindness in our community with renewed faithfulness and boldness. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
That's a fantastic video, and it really has been a complete organization and just a wonderful team that's come together to put the video together, to put the campaign together. We have been meeting for weeks and weeks and weeks. Every single Wednesday we have probably 25 people on that committee, which also is just a subset of about 100 people who were involved in the vision behind the design. And now, to date, we've raised that. I saw that little chart outside. It's a little stale. I think we're about $600,000 higher than the chart outside. I believe we're about $5.3 million. So we're still $2 million shy of the primary goal of $7.3 million, but I know that we can do it. There's still time to give, but the time is drawing nigh. I believe the Lenten Preaching Series starts when? February 22? So we need to have our pledges all in and the campaign finished by that time. So no gift is too small, or as you say.
And certainly no gift is too large.
That's exactly.
But truly, I think this is such an exciting opportunity to participate in Calvary's future, and we just invite all of you to prayerfully consider your gift, how you might stretch to participate in this campaign. No gift is too small, no gift is too large. We just want this to be about our community. We all know that Calvary is such a special place, and that's been really demonstrated by coming out of COVID and the momentum that's been created. We had a wonderful party at the Botanic Garden. I know many of you were there, and you can just feel the energy. It's an exciting time at Calvary, and so we hope that all of you will participate. And as Scott said, this is the moment. This is the moment. So if you have not pledged, there are lots of ways to do it. You can go online to Calvary's website and do that online. You can, most of you, I think all of you have received a pledge card in the mail. You can fill that out and mail it back. You can bring it and put it in the collection plate. There's also a box that Reverend Walters made in his woodworking shop that is back here by the bathrooms. You can drop it in there. So you can also email Katie Owen. You can email Scott and I. Any way you'd like to pledge, we are more than happy to take that pledge and put it towards this great campaign. So we so appreciate you. And again, February 21st is the deadline. So please get your pledges in soon.
One more thing. I did go on my phone last night just to double check it. It is easy. You can go on the phone. The whole thing works. You can kind of press all around, and you'll eventually be able to put all your pledge online, information online, from the comfort of your bed, while you're sitting around reading a book, whatever you like to do. It all works. Also, I just wanted to say about the gifts and just the timing. Not only is the time nigh because we're running towards the end of the campaign, but a lot of us are new to church, but a lot of us have been here a long time, and I personally feel our staff is just, and Scott's leadership, and Catherine and Paul, and everyone on the staff, it's just about the best we've ever had. And I just think it's the vision that they've provided and the vision that David Lusk and so many other people have put together for us to move into, I think is just fabulous. And as you know, we haven't had a campaign in over 30 years. And not only do we want to make big structural vision changes, but I mean, just look around. It's just time to fix everything. I think I learned about a tile that doesn't work for the limbs as you walk along and try to serve offering. And there's just so many things that we just need to be responsible, good stewards of this oldest continually open building in Memphis, Tennessee. So I hope that y'all all will pledge. Every single person should have gotten a packet. By the way, last night we were at Nina and Greta's house for a small group for congregational gifts and congregational meetings. Peg and Anna Holtzclaw. It's great to have someone to help with your memory. It's just fabulous. I just need to have her go along everywhere with me. We had a great congregational meeting, and at those meetings, you can also bring your envelope and parties. Sorry,
not meetings.
Thank you.
Yeah. They're fun. They're really fun.
They're fun. There was music and drink and food and great people. But Scott walks through all the plans. So if you have more questions about the plans, you want to look through them, and you have your own. Everyone wants to know, has my cheese been moved, and where has it been moved to, and where do I get dressed on Sunday morning now, and where are the bathrooms, and all that kind of stuff. All those questions will be answered. So hopefully you can go online. You can look in the little program, the bulletins every Sunday. They're in there. You can sign up for a party. There's a sign-up genius. Everyone is welcome to all the parties. So hopefully, and last night we probably had 25, 30, 35 people there. It was just a great, great time. So
join us.
Join us.
Thanks, Meg and Scott. Really appreciate y'all's work. I think I heard Scott say he pledged again. You went on last night and just pledged again. So as many times as you want. What's the smoke signals, air, skywriting, whatever you want. Yeah, Nina and Greta's house was just really a joy. It was a miniature of what we did at the Botanic Garden. So there was a lot of different flavors of party you can join with people. As they said, what the Botanic Garden party hit for a lot of us is there's a deep longing to be back together in ways that was hard for a few years. So joyful, joyful time. Well, I want to say thanks. I like to highlight each year and at least just remind us of the Calvary staff, the good people who keep ministries going here on your behalf, who facilitate what you do out in the world, and express my gratitude for my colleagues. So Robin Banks is our Director of Communications. Deep gratitude for Robin, and I just want to say that we're her church family, and this has been a hard year for Robin and for Emma as they lost Bill this year. And so we're grateful for Calvary Church, for the staff that's gathered around her, and made sure that the communications work goes on. Not quite as well as it does when she's around, but our hearts were with her, and she was where she needed to be. So continue your prayers for Robin and Emma as they heal in the new year. Thanks. Jocelyn Busby is new to our staff. We're really grateful to have Jocelyn directing children and family ministries. She's come on board this year and is gathering our kids in wonderful, beautiful new ways. Jeremy Demarest just moved across the hall. He was with the smallest ones, and he moved up, kind of graduated with some of his kids up into youth work to make room for Jocelyn. Richard Hendricks is our facilities manager. Richard Hendricks has been a friend of Calvary, deeply embedded for a long, long time, and he has made this building and block his own in ways that even he hadn't before. We see his fingerprint all over the place. So grateful for Richard's work. Kristen Lynch, Dr. Kristen Lynch, organist choir master here. The music program and what goes on here, it's wound into almost everything we do, is one step away maybe from our musical praise. So grateful for Kristen. Monica Marshall has come on and become sexton and director of security for us. She is a wise and gentle presence at everything we do. So many events that we now have a Monica to be here and tending to us and welcoming people and keeping us safe and just being the lovely, gracious soul she is. Mary O'Brien is still feeding us, and the feeding is happening. If you haven't been back for a Wednesday night, it's hopping down there on Wednesday nights. We've got all ages tearing around the room down there. There's usually a small person who's going to say the prayer. There's a vying for who gets to say the prayer into the microphone next week, and Mary's feeding us. And Katie Owen came back on to be our bookkeeper. She had previously been in Steve Smith's role, and then back home to be with 2 kids, and then we lured her back in to do the bookkeeping side of things. So grateful for Katie's work as well. Yvette Peoples is still tracking people down every Sunday with her iPad or whatever means she has to make sure new folks are identified and called by name, and she reports back to the vestry and to the staff. Who did we see this week, and how could we welcome them into our life at Calvary? Steve Smith is our steady hand at the helm, director of finance and operations, making sure that the buildings and block run smoothly, all the HR, all of the things that this organization needs to have happen. Steve, we're grateful to have him. He's actually a member of the Mother Church out in LaGrange, but he's here today, so grateful for him. And Christine Todd, I don't have enough adjectives for Christine Todd. All of them. Christine Todd, Director of Outreach, passionate for justice in our city and engaging people in the good work of Christian witness. I have to this year put this slide up. At Diocesan Convention this year, Christine was awarded the Bishop's Cross. Our bishops only awarded 2 of these. The first one, because she came on board, the first was someone who had served for 40 years for the diocese, and this year she said what Christine has led at Calvary throughout the pandemic is an example of how a community can turn toward its neighborhood in times of need, and so we all are grateful for Christine's witness and her leadership. There are people who work here not all the time, but are actually absolutely important. Every week they show up for certain things that we do, from Cassandra Booker and Robbie Phillips in our nursery. Brian Campbell is assistant organist, essential to the music program. Matt Clayton, if y'all don't know Mac, you got to know Mac. He's our community liaison, comes in on Sundays and really helps things work smoothly. He was at the Hospitality Hub for years and is stand-up performer guy. Anyway. Mary Honey is the smiling face of Calvary to most people during the week, as she tends to the desk downstairs. There's also a ministry. She's helping people find the connections they way, because they can't find their way all the way to the 4th floor where Christine is too quickly, right? Grateful for Mary. Lawrence, excuse me. Lawrence Ingram, steady help in the kitchen. He's really become one we rely on for events and whatnot. Connie Marshall helps out Mary Honey, but you also know that Connie is the waffle shop chair. So she's doing the work that Heidi's doing in tandem, getting waffle shop folks. And just to reiterate, Connie can use your help. If you want a waffle shop volunteer job, she can use you. We need all kinds of folks helping wait tables and helping check people out and all of the things. There's training. It's all good. Excuse me. Diana Nichols has come to us through Christine, who found a partnership with Maritan. Diana is the person on staff of all of them who has the best theological questions. for me. She tries to stump me every time I come down, and she's sitting across from Mary when she's down here helping in the clothes closet or whatnot. She stops me and asks me this question that she wants me to straighten out for her. I haven't straightened her out yet, but she's stumped me a few times. She's a delight, but it's a partnership with another. She's not actually on our staff. We don't pay her, but it's just a partnership with another, with another Memphis entity. So grateful to have her as well. Joseph Powell's our handbell director, handbell choir director. You just met Heidi again. Melissa Warwell, St. Cecilia choir director. All these people have some part on the staff in Calvary that's essential to our life together. I'm just grateful, and I celebrate these long list of people doing such good work on behalf of Calvary. Would you thank them? All right. And there's also clergy. Excuse me. Catherine Bush and Paul McLean, deeply grateful for their leadership and their gifts. And these other amazing folks over here. Yeah. It's a thing in this trade. I really have been blessed to be able to preach alongside remarkable, thoughtful preachers. That's just one of the many gifts it is to have these other two people in this place. These other remarkable folks are also part of our team. Audrey Gonzalez comes and goes when she's in the country. She's here. A remarkable priest. Buddy Stallings, much beloved. Mimsy Jones, our archdeacon and rock. And Jerry Stiles is a deacon who's been a long relationship here with Calvary, but living in Mexico, and Jerry and Wendy have been here partly to get some medical care, but it's been a real gift to us to have Jerry serving as a deacon. So grateful for our clergy folk as well. How are we doing? Okay, we're doing okay. Well, I'm doing okay. I don't know how you're doing. So we've acknowledged that this is a hard week in Memphis. Martin Luther said a lot of things that really shouldn't be repeated. But there's something that he was alleged to have said that he probably didn't say that I find kind of helpful, which is this. He said, if I knew the world would end tomorrow, I'd still plant my apple tree. If I knew the world would end tomorrow, I would still plant my apple tree. And that's been taken and applied in lots of different ways in people's lives in this way that even when the world might be coming to an end as we know it, which I think the world as we know it is always coming to an end, he would go ahead and do this hopeful thing and in a way just continue the faithful thing he's doing. The idea that how do we continue to do the faithful things we're doing is it should stand up, whatever's going to happen tomorrow. And I felt that way about thinking about this annual meeting this week. I usually like to have some sort of guiding metaphor. It's kind of what preachers do, right? We have metaphors for things. And I thought maybe it could be a certain building project. Maybe that doesn't surprise some of you. It's that one. Maybe that's not the one you were thinking of. So that's the box we've been talking about. And here's why you have to endure this. Margaret McLean, in one of our Wednesday meetings that Scott alluded to, offhandedly said, Scott should build a box. He could build a box for the cars and whatnot. And the second thing she said that was way more naive was like, maybe you should talk about the box. Well, asking a would-be woodworker to talk about one of their projects, it's kind of like going to coffee, realizing you were there with a hardcore narcissist and kind of leaning across your cappuccino and saying, so tell me about you. So here we are. But the box is kind of fun for me. So during COVID, to keep me sane and probably Ardell sane even more, I bought some saws and chisels to try to teach myself how to cut dovetail joints. And I'm not very good at it yet. In fact, the other thing you should know about a woodworker is if he talks long enough, he'll just tell you everything that's wrong with what he just built, not what you like about it. But we thought, okay, we'll build a box to be a container. And Steve Smith, I don't know if you know, we had a brick go through one of our beloved windows and had it repaired this year. So Steve Smith, being a lover of all things old and beautiful, had this cardboard box with the shards of the glass. And we thought, well, maybe we could take those and just, put those in there and make, I don't know. That's what our glass looks like. it was rich to reframe something that was broken and beautiful and put it in another context and say, I wonder how this thing that was passed down to us might serve a different purpose and carry some of the beauty of the past off into the future. I feel like that's something that's going on here. I feel like Calvary is a container. It's a container for all that you are and all that you do, and it's one that's got a history, a long, deep, beautiful history. At the beginning of December, I was standing in this room. Bishop Phoebe had brought some bishop colleagues of hers here to Calvary for a meeting for a couple days. And so what your bishop does is, you're the rector, so you got to come welcome all the bishops when they get here. So I was upstairs and scratched some ideas down on the back of a piece of paper and came down here. And then I just kind of launched into a not all that humble brag about all the stuff y'all are doing in Memphis right now. And have you ever done this? You ever been asked to come and talk about something that's every day to you, and you suddenly, as you're talking about it, you realize how amazing it is? I mean, the AIDS fabric sculpture was still hanging next door, so I invited all the bishops, said, you should really go over there. You should say prayers under that. And that went up in the late 1980s. Think about what it meant to put that up in the late 1980s. And later in that afternoon, I said that Christine Todd was going to be taking the spouses, after Aldell was with them for the day, over to the Welcome Inn, show what's happened over there and it's been renovated. I was going to talk to those same people about the work we've done around truth-telling and the slave market that was active on our block. And since big anniversaries for the Handel's Messiah and the preaching series were coming, I told them all about that. Said a word about those, and then something about this capital campaign and our idea that we could really turn toward our block in new ways with our buildings. And in that moment, I had this sense that whatever the bishops heard, I was looking through this small handful of just very specific events, only to find each of those reminding me of dozens and dozens and dozens more that you all know about. As if they were all little doors kind of opening into little rooms of so much more goodness that goes on here still. I said nothing at all about children in white cottages or silver being polished in the sacristy or coats and shoes and burritos and foot care and dignity and friendship being provided for our neighbors in need on a Sunday morning. I didn't mention the ordinary kindness of teachers in Sunday school classrooms or hospital calls by priests and lay people alike. I didn't mention dishes being washed, floors being mopped, chairs being stacked up after some bustling party or event, or ledgers being balanced faithfully so the work of ministry can go on. I didn't make any mention of communion wafers that are being counted and sealed into tiny Ziploc bags in the sacristy, or that arrangement of flowers one day that was a needed gift to maybe some stranger whose pew creaks as she sits down in it with some fresh sadness or uncontainable joy in this old, old church. I could go on and on and on, and you could go on and on and on through all of the miracles that happen every day, all the time. And we can't talk about any of them today, really, just a couple. That's what I hope this kind of meeting, it sparks your imagination. Well, we'll have a beautiful reports. You can read more from everybody in their area, but I hope that these synopses really spark your imagination into the life of our church together and all of the myriad things that happen day in and day out that make a difference in your lives and my life and the life of folks in Memphis. A couple of things, though, I want to lift out of 2022. When I think of Calvary as a container of so much history and story, there were a couple of anniversaries that were significant. We know this guy. You might not have heard the voice on the cassette tape. That was a tougher one, but this is Dan Matthews. Dan Matthews first preached at the Lenten Preaching Series in 1972. 1972. So last year was the 50th year over which Dan had been a presence here. And I'm guessing there are people in this room who can remember the first time Dan leaned over that pulpit right like this and told you that you were loved by God. How was that? Was that okay? God. Was it pretty good? And some of you may have believed it for the first time when you heard it from Dan. He's a remarkable preacher and a remarkably faithful person. We were able to celebrate him. He didn't know it was coming, but David Lusk looked through the racks and found this beautiful, beautiful woodcut by by Ted Ferris. Memphis artist Ted Ferris. And I want you to see what it says. It's may peace and love fill your heart and flood with light the troubled dark. Woodcuts he did in the late 70s, I think, right? So not all that far into Dan's tenure. So Dan was deeply grateful. He's communicated it to Heidi and to me. It hangs proudly on his wall. It was also the 100th anniversary in December from the first time that Adolf Studerman, the longtime organist choir master here at Calvary, first offered the Messiah, Handel's Messiah, to the city. 100 years. And some of you here that night, it was a full house, right? It was glorious. And part of the glory was fresh and new. It was the symphony right now and the energy that's in the symphony right now. It was our choir standing up there. I still feel like I'm beaming to think those are our people. Every Sunday they're singing in our church, and here they are, absolutely able and worthy to be standing up there with these pros singing the Messiah. And as Kristen has said, the tradition was always for Studerman to start with a hymn, to stand up, the whole congregation. This is church. Handel's Messiah is a proclamation, and we're going to do it in church as a proclamation of the good news. It's moving and powerful, 100 years of it, and it's as fresh this year as it's ever been. One more. We've talked about some other containers and the good work that gets done out in the community. The other thing I want to say about Handel's Messiah is to not forget that the music program at this church is drawing young people into the deep and broad musical tradition of Anglican music. Part of what's happening on Wednesday nights are these young people that are all getting fed, and then they're going upstairs and they're learning hymns and they're learning anthems and whatnot, and growing up and to be remarkable musicians. Deeply important part of our worship in our family right now. Who knows where they'll go, the places they will go, right? I want to talk about a couple more, and then we'll move. Then we'll close. We'll go on to church. We've mentioned the welcome in a few times, but this is the year, especially when Richard Hendricks came in and really threw himself into this summer to help us get this project finished. That we renovated, we had a building that was ours when the Hospitality Hub moved to their beautiful new digs over on Washington Street. That the vestry said maybe we could get that building ship-shape and offer it back to the community for a time at least as room in the inn. So we fixed the roof and we fixed the HVAC and they put some showers in. And now you can volunteer to be part of Calvary's group. We have other congregations coming here to help take part in this essential room in the inn ministry. It's clean, it's easy, there's a system. So spread the word. It may be a book club of yours who wants to participate. It doesn't have to be a church. But it's a beautiful example of Calvary looking at the containers we have and saying, I wonder what the world might need. I wonder how we might offer this back to the world. The other part that Eric alluded to is it came out of that COVID time when the vestry said really clearly, we're going to get PPP money and apply it to the things that we do, but if we get to the end of this year and we were more privileged than some of the world, we're setting it aside and we're putting it back into the world that needs it. And that's how we were able to do this, kind of paying that tithe out ahead with regard to our campaign. So, deeply joyful thing. The last thing I want to say, if you've heard a lot about Basement Church, but I don't know if you've heard the story of how it came to be. And this is not, I wasn't there. Odell can correct me. So during COVID, everything got shifted, and the community breakfast and clothes closet went out into the parking lot, and then the chapel downstairs became a sorting area. And I think it was Elizabeth Crosby. Yeah? Elizabeth Crosby saw the light coming in one of those beautiful Dorothy Sturm windows one day and said, y'all, this is church. We're doing church now. The people down there that were making relationships, Jesus said he was going to show up to us and people who are most vulnerable. And a community was pulled together and formed in those days that was spiritual and practical. This is Basement Church. It's a weird name if you walk in on it. It can sound wrong. But we've hung on to it because of the story behind it, at least so far, that wherever we are doing God's work, it can become a beautiful thing. It can become church and community. Last thing I'm leaving you with is that as a result of that, we have these containers and we're responding to what God might need us to do next. The evolution of Basement Church has been people like Gene Jemison helping coordinate foot care for people. Your feet are in bad shape if you walk around all day long in this world. Once a month that's happening. Mary Nee sat down and some other folks and got their laptops out and said, maybe all these stimulus funds could go to people who really need it if we just brought laptops and did their tax returns. 387 tax returns. There's a bunch of them still out there. So far, it's $190,689 that have gone to people experiencing homelessness, many of them. I think the reason I lift that up is it's an example of being true to who we are in the past, these containers, these ministries that we've, and looking around in the days that we have today, right where we are. What is God calling us to today, and how might who we are adapt and evolve in the days to come? Who knows what 2023 will hold for us? None of us does, right? We didn't know what 2022, 2021, 2020. We do know there will be some chaos. We may be saying our prayers in Grizzlies Prep, more to come. But when we disrupt our life here with the building project that we believe we're called to. But I do believe this. We have good precedent for trusting this community to navigate the days to come. Find creative new ways that are relevant to what the world needs. And more than ever, if anybody's going to lead me off into the next year, it's going to be these guys. We're in good hands. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.